Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining me on our next lesson on our research theme, China and the global economy. Okay, during this session we're just going to be focusing on some of the key supply constraints that the Chinese economy is likely to experience over the coming years, and which may impede the rate of growth. So let's take a little look at what we've got. Okay, now the first one is an interesting one because when we discussed some of the key consequences of the growth that China has experienced, we saw that urbanization has given rise to a large increase in negative externalities. But part of the reason for that is because many of the large cities have become urban sprawls. So just to give that a context there, I believe that Beijing is now on its eighth ring road system. So the city has just sprawled further and further out. But actually, this process of urbanization needs to be accelerated so that these cities can be managed far more efficiently on a far more cleaner and greener basis. Now, it's often recommended that one way in which they may choose to do this is via using large cluster cities which have very, very good supporting infrastructure, which direct trains and other methods of transport in towards those super cities that could be as large as 40 or 50 million people. Now, a key reason for this is because economists have found that productivity in those really large cities is about 50 to 80% higher than in smaller towns. So that really is fundamental towards driving the supply side of the economy in the future. Okay, the next point we've got here is just regarding the limited natural resources that China does to a degree still experience. And this, of course, includes particularly land, but also access to commodities as well. This is one of the key reasons why they're very, very interested in the South China Seas and the potential energy that may be within those markets, be it oil or gas. Now, one of the ways in which they're trying to counter this supply side constraint is via the One Bridge, One Road or Bridge and Road initiative, which will help to actually improve their access to natural resources and commodities from as far afield as Africa, but at a closer rate, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and so on. So they're trying to address that one. Next point, it's just regarding skill shortages that China is moving towards, or trying to move towards, a more innovative consumption-led model. Now, in doing so, it is going to require increasing levels of high value added skills in the creative industries and things like marketing and design. There does seem to be some shortages present, despite the fact that millions of Chinese graduates graduate from university every year. Okay, next point is regarding factor immobility, of course, big market failure. The fact that particularly labour can be immobile, partly because of the hukou system, which is a registration-based system, which provides urban residents with better rights than rural migrants. So if a migrant worker comes into the city, then they won't necessarily be entitled for healthcare, for education, and other provisions through the public sector. Now, that can pose problems. Now, the hukou system is something that is being reformed, and that's something we'll look at later. But nevertheless, the hukou system has been a clear reason for inequality and is contributing to a degree of factor immobility. And the labour needs to be more mobile and more willing to move to those super cities. Okay, next up. We've also got an ageing population as well. There's some excellent graphics on the BBC website that you'll be able to find on this. So if you type in and do a search on China and the 421 family, BBC, that should do the trick. And you'll be able to just scroll through some different graphics to illustrate the extent of this problem. Essentially, this could break down to what would be a sort of 421 based based family structure, where under the one-child policy, which of course recently been reformed to the two-child policy, each parent could have one child. They then marry, these two different families, of course, okay, they then marry and they give rise to one child. So given that life expectancy has increased rapidly in China, it means that there is the potential for all of these 6 people here to actually retire, and they would then retire and perhaps rely upon the earnings of this one person here who is left working. So that's 421 system. Again, that's something that's been looked at under this new reformed two-child policy. Okay, next point, it's just regarding food quality issues, and this is something that China have tried to address in their foreign direct investment by buying American pork manufacturers, pork companies, and yeah, it's there's been all sorts of food scandals in China, and yeah, there is this concern that the quality of the produce when it comes to food in China isn't necessarily of the highest standard, and for that reason China has been buying a lot of Western goods, and this has caused supply constraints across the world for things like baby milk powder. Okay, so those are some of the key points that we've got here. Of course, there's other ones that we could look at, which might include, for instance, the financial sector and how the financial and banking sector needs to improve its ability to reallocate capital to the best possible uses, rather than just where the Communist Party would like that money to flow, and so on. So of course we'll discuss that sort of thing a little bit later on, but otherwise that's it for now. Thank you very much.